Alright. What I should be doing here is removing that, but that's gonna have to wait, so you get to see something a lot of 80s model GMs had, and that is electric cooling fan issues. This is a piece of an extension cord that was run just to a switch in the driver's footwell with wire nuts, because you're supposed to use house wiring whenever you work on your car, I guess. This was just a slap me together, not done by a mechanic. In other words, it's a disaster. Let's see if I can figure out where this goes. And just kind of yank on it, because there's no... This isn't even supposed to be in a car. Much less was it done right for if you were putting it in a car, even though you're not supposed to. And if you are going to do some kind of crazy aftermarket wiring, it'd be preferable if you marked out what and how you did it somehow. And you can see there's the other end of it. I don't know. I think I stole the switch for another project because the switch was actually usable. Otherwise you end up with aftermarket wiring stuff you just don't want to deal with. Alright. This is not going to be pretty, so hold on a moment. You can't quite see it very well, but this is all tangled and mangled and run whichever way it fit in, but won't come out. This looks important, but I haven't the foggiest notion where it goes. Working on a previously modified car. If you don't love it, that's just fine. And that is what they called cooling fan wire. Yeah, I just call it extension cord chunks. It's actually really long. The other thing makes me wonder how many different times this car has been modified as I get into the center console here. Something they taught me in college is like, take a bunch of pictures of stuff so you know what goes where and what does what. Oh, I see. That's the biggest issue this car had when it was made. The huge problem is there is, as I'm sure you may have noticed if you've ever seen one of these before, there is no cup holders in the car just at all. There was a very, very rare factory cup holder, but I've never actually seen one. Ooh, hey, I might have left this stored a little too long. Couple of huge wasps' nests in the passenger door. Bet there's some in the driver's side too. That this is now on the driveway.
No way, that's 15 mil.
Could not find the right multi-port fuel injection manifold. And I've kind of been looking on and off for about 5 years. So while he's doing the air injection stuff, we got to do a bunch of deleting, which means taking off all of this stuff that is definitely not emissions related. Half of the wiring. Then we can put this stuff on. It should be Edelbrock Performer and a Holley 650 double pumper vacuum secondary. But in 1986, they changed these 4 bolt hole positions, so these have to be drilled at a funny angle that might not actually work. But, I'm going to burn holes in the pistons with a bunch of nitrous anyway, so I don't really mind that much. Still don't have the fast forward function on the camera, so I've got nearly nothing done in the last little bit. The best stuff happens when the camera's off. Got this off with minimal trouble, and there was a mouse food stash right in there, and of course that's got an open exhaust valve. We shall see if he put something stupid in my piston or not. I don't know. Half of the bolts for the other manifold are out. They are really ugly. I've oiled this up. I'll see if I can pull that. Clean the last bits of tree and earth and wind and fire or whatever off of the intake. Pull the dizzy. Pop this whole thing off. And find out how much drilling I have to do to get the manifold that doesn't fit to fit. And maybe even seal. Okay, so I am told something like putting ATF down the spark plug holes will maybe help free up the rings. It's the squirt bottle. The easiest way to access the plugs would be to pull the engine, but don't know how well you can see that. Been at it for way too long. I've removed the exhaust manifolds because they're restrictive garbage. And now you can just basically get at the plugs with a wrench. Thanks to a random tiny little piece of tin. It took me probably an hour to take one bolt out. But that, as they say, is why mechanics hate engineers. A little bit of a progress update. I've begun slotting these 4 holes. I've got a lot of precision machine work, to do to them, because in 1986 or so, Chevy decided, let's change the angle that these 4 bolts go in at. We won't change any of the others, just those 4. Back to why mechanics hate engineers, which I'm sure I could do a full, hour-long segment on. If you can see, I've sorta got it cut, but there's a lot more cutting that needs to, a lot more material that needs to be removed. Okay, after much longer than it should have taken, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're in and they're run down just to make sure it sits properly. That being said, I think the sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4 for torquing them, and then you go out from that. But I'm probably going to totally ignore that. I wouldn't even torque them except I have a torque wrench. But if you're going to do something the wrong way, do it the wrong way, as someone once told me. I do seem to spend a lot of time sitting exactly where I am. Now, to work out the shape of the carburetor gasket, since this is a custom application, what I ended up doing is taking just a little bit of light oil, your penetrating lube it seems like, spreading just a thin film on the intake, and pressing that down in the location I want. It transfers the shape pretty well. We'll find out if it works, I guess. Well, I had a little bit of a health and safety incident, but the gasket turned out nice. I don't know how well you can see it hiding under there. And the carb is on. The list grows shorter. Now to check another thing off, the oil change. I don't know if it was, let's see if I can do this with my shadow, scheduled or anything, but it needs one. So an oil change it gets. Ooh, EGR block-off plates are on. I've had the same chunk of aluminum that these came out of for years and years and just kept making it smaller. Amazing how good condition the starter's in. Like, for 30 years old, that's impressive. It's almost like I grabbed that when I happened to find a distributor for a 1970 Camaro. Because I am told the computer gets unhappy when this is a carburetor, not an electronic carburetor, basically. So it doesn't like to do things with this electronic advance, so that vacuum is the way to go, or so I have heard. There's that. I think I may have mentioned that I have the oil changed. And I'm sure you'd love to stare at my feet basically while I install that. If you want a little more in-depth knowledge on it, refer to one of the Fiero episodes. We do that, and it's for 80s model GM, 80s model GM. It's the same. The starter itself is all that's different, and that's very similar. Alright, so, as you may be able to tell, there's a battery in it. Ignore that it looks like it came out of a Dodge truck, because that's where it came from. Starter is in and attached. Some slight goofing has been done to try and get it to work, but there's still much wiring to be understood. I have probably 14 or 1500 pages of literature on this very car that I have to kind of pore through to try and understand the wiring that I'm going to promptly turn around and chop up and cut out. But you don't want to cut out the wrong wires, right? So away we'll chop once the battery charges more. Alright, so I've done a bunch of stuff since a few seconds ago from your perspective, I guess. Now I'm going to do a couple of really sketchy things, and this is either going to run or it won't. Time to find out, though. Here we go, sports fans. Wow, that failed spectacularly. Must have a bad connection. Oh. Ow. As you can at least sort of kind of see, I've got plug wires on it and a choke open, and about to, trip over my little bottle of gasoline. If I can get her to crank, it should start. There's my fire control. Big jug of water, and there's my source, because it turns out that battery's junk. I'll give this another shot, see if it works. Well, like every good movie, which this apparently isn't, it's called vlogging or something, there's going to be a few plot twists along the way. This one is the 305 comes out. Found a bigger displacement engine that runs. I'm just going to slap her in and get it running. It's, if memory serves correct, about 4 or 5 wires to make it run and 12 bolts to attach the thing. So, hopefully, by next weekend this will have a running 350 in it. Well, it's out again. Once more, and I'm thinking for the final time. Didn't get to film it, but pulled the starter back off, which I should have done before it came out. Pulled the mounts off. I can't see what I'm filming right now. If you look at the windshield, you'll see why removing the hood is always a two-man job, or two-person job. As here, that's from my knee, trying to flip this over onto the roof. And it's actually minimal. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it. Right there in the corner. In the corner of the hood getting the windshield. I was actually lucky it didn't do more damage than that, but the windshield's already junk, so I wasn't too worried. Provided I can find another one. I've heard glass for these cars is getting to be a challenge to find. But we shall see, I suppose. Okay, the engine is out, and transmission, let's see if I can show you, blocked up on chunks of wood so it doesn't fall on the ground on me. The 305 has gone to the great junkyard in the, well actually I think they put it in the shed. And I've picked up this 350 out of, let's see, it says 82 K5 Blazer. So essentially a literal truck engine. From the crappy cast iron manifolds to the crappier, I know you'll love it in the comments, but crappier Rochester carburetor. I think I can clean her up, make some changes. It's older, so it's drive belts, not serpentine. And the water pump might be different, but change a few things, clean it up, toss it in there. I guess I wasn't kidding when I sarcastically said out with the old and in with the older. I think that's going to wrap it up for today.